it's just gone 10:15, and here on BBC Radio 3, it's time for Mixing It, presented by Robert Sandell and Mark Russell.
Hello, tonight we bring you the fruits of a fascinating day out with Jem Finer, leader of the Pogues and originator of a number of large-scale sound installations, the most recent being his score for A Hole in the Ground in Kingswood in Kent. And alongside that we have CD tracks by Jonas Policewoman, Per Ubu, the Life Force Trio, Leo Abrahams, Gilad Atzmon, Talk Less, Say More, as well as some Palestinian hip-hop and a piece of Chinese improvisation on the Zeng.
And we open with a track from the new CD by Sex Mob, the New York funky jazz quartet, led by the slide trumpeter Steve Bernstein. For their latest album, Sexotica, they've turned to Martin Denny and his Hawaiian exotica style for inspiration. They describe this as an electroacoustic fantasy inspired by Martin Denny. And to give you a flavour, this is how it all opens, Pygmy Suite. Pygmy Suite, the opening track on the new album by Sex Mob. The album's called Sexotica, and it's on the Thirsty Ear Blue series. And,
great to have them back in. I love Sex Mob.
Yeah, I think this is my favourite of their albums because, like their previous one, it has the sort of New Orleans style brass band mixed with the jazzy grooves. But they've enlisted a production team called Good and Evil, and they've recorded it at their Good and Evil studios in Brooklyn. And they bring to it a much more contemporary, cutting edge electro sound, and they've added all these exotic sounds as well. So it really is.
It's quite slinky compared to how they have been in the past.
Yeah, and it's quite dubby as well. But the whole album is a really fantastic sound collage.
Okay, right, big tick in the margin to that one. Now, this next piece is proof that hip-hop really has become the modern folk music, or sort of musical Esperanto. It's by a Palestinian trio called Dam, which is apparently the Arabic word for immortal, Hebrew for blood, and an abbreviation of Da Arabic MCs. Well, they come from a slum town near Jerusalem, although there's nothing down at heel about the sumptuous and heady blend of Western and Middle Eastern musical ingredients on their slickly produced album Ida, or Dedication. This is down with a track that translates as Love Us and Buy Us.
عملنا لازمة ما إلها معنى بس علشان شعبنا يسمعنا عملنا لازمة ما إلها معنى بس علشان شعبنا يسمعنا واقف خلي الناس هنا توقف رافش الناس دايما تحب توقف الأقلية بتسيطر على الأكترية بشوفه بكتبه بس عجله بقوله بتسمعه بتحسه بتوقف تتحركه بس بعد كم سنة هنا على المنصة بلا ولا معنا لأول مرة الكل بيسمعنا ما بيمنعنا هلا كل جملة بقولها قولولي أيوة حطينا على الراب حطة مساك للمايك للحنظلة احنا مش نوضي طلعوا من القلم كل جندي فينا ماسك علم والمايك بين ايديه والغضب بعينيه والمايك بين ايديه والغضب بعينيه عملنا لازمة ما إلها معنى بس علشان شعبنا يسمعنا عملنا لازمة ما إلها معنى بس علشان شعبنا يسمعنا مين بيبدأ وبعقله في قاموس وسيق قوة وبيدي في فانوس ننورها نورجيك انه في كلام غير الحب لا تستعملها لا تكتبها لسه ما زهقتها غير ولا الابداع بطل كلمة تحتمها راب بعد احنا والاهداء فهرسنا اللسان سيفنا والبيت اكيد فرسنا وانت هدفنا وانا ناديني الهداف اذا انصبت مش تروح تنادي الاسعاف احنا بنخلي قلبك يرجع يدق من غير كهرباء مين اتأثرت تعال اوصف لك الطبخة مثل سندباد نوصل كل بلاد وانا عندي باب كلمة سر ينفتح ويبان وقالك هالكلمة انا وعلي بابا اخوان طل الصباح روح نام عملنا لازمة ما إلها معنى بس علشان شعبنا يسمعنا عملنا لازمة ما إلها معنى بس علشان شعبنا يسمعنا واقف خلي الناس هنا توقف رافش الناس دايما تحب توقف هش هش صار بالفن جواب كتير اغاني والسؤال عن ايه معاني اللي بقولنا طلع تزرع مسخرة بدل ما نخلع المسخرة احنا بنخلع على المسخرة وهز هز راس طلع قول مش تهز القفا طلع خرا لا لا ممنوع اقول ممنوع بعالم الراب هلا من كتر اغاني الحب انتو كرهتوا حتى الحب نفسه كلام يضلوا يلف على بعضه بيدوخ بوقع حملت ربطت بسطر ورا كتبت رسمت براسه حتى عرفته عشان بسطنا الاعلى عشانه يسمع تقدروا تطنشونا او تسكتونا ولو قررتوا انكم ما تشتونا ولا اشي على كليب بنجيب رقاصة بنقعد نصبر وبنبيع ببساطة عملنا لازمة ما إلها معنى بس علشان شعبنا يسمعنا عملنا لازمة ما إلها معنى بس علشان شعبنا يسمعنا وقف أنا راب وإنتو عربي راب يمنا شمال فاهمين
على الزمن الزواج على عيني غير وانا كده وانا ولا على زنا ولا تجي وين او زكين العلق ولا العوض ولا العوايا وانت العقل زنا وانا على الزمن العيا وانا عايز كده انا وين العواو وانا على وين إليه
Gilad Atzmon there, the Israeli saxophonist and political humorist, with a track from his new album, Artificial and the Promised Band. And you heard a spacey little number called Radical Goose. And before that there was Dam, a Palestinian rap group, of whom I'm sure Gilad Atzmon approves, and Lovers and Bias. I saw you scribbling a few notes during that.
Yeah,
Mark.
well, I
What was that
noticed
about?
it started with a sample or a version of the Flower Song from Lakme by Dalib, and I couldn't understand why they'd use that because it didn't come back in the track. But it was so exotic, I suppose it doesn't really matter. There are so many different sounds going on in there.
Yeah, it's very well produced, that album, I must say. It's a great listen. And of course, all the lyrics are in Arabic, so I have no idea what they're talking about, but one gathers that they are some kind of a protest group of some sort.
And the Gilad Atzmon?
Well, Gilad Atzmon, who of course is had famously sort of politically motivated Israeli himself, has just done this, which is actually rather disappointing, I think. He's trying too hard to funny. The track I chose, was actually quite unrepresentative of the style of the rest of it, which is a lot of rather sort of cod funny or attempted humorous takes of things like Bye Bye Blackbird, done in a kind of klezmer-y style.
So it's spoofy.
Yeah, but trying too hard, I think. I think Gilad Atzmon's better when he's on his more abstract experimental tip, personally.
Okay, a track now from an excellent album by Talk Less, Say More. This is the work of one man, a Leeds University student called Matthew Jennings. He makes all the music in his home studio, and for his Maisha's Morning CD, he's enlisted the help of the Cardiff-based soprano Erica Jones. Together with Jennings' churchy organs and what he calls prog hop beats, the result is truly original, I think. This is Tell Me a True Story. That's Talk Less, Say More, and that is Matthew Jennings. That's from his new album Maisha's Morning, and that track was Tell Me a True Story, and it featured the vocals of soprano Erica Jones, and that's on his home-produced CD, and I expect we'll hear more of him. He told us in an email that he's just working on a rap album.
Does that mean that we're going to hear more of this amazing new hybrid called prog hop, Mark?
That's what he terms his beats.
Prog hop has a terribly sort of bunny rabbity kind of sound to it to me. I'm not sure I think that's going to sort of play with the audience. Now, Anla Cortis is an Argentinian sound artist who's spent the last 15 years conducting and recording various experiments with cassette tapes. He performed for a while with an experimental band called Burt Reynolds Ensemble, also known as Reynolds, but now operates under his own name. He's just released an album called Tapeworks, on which he splatters dense slabs of petrified tones, disembodied vocal samples, and other lost and found items of musique concrète, and then hits them with his distortion pedal. So, eyes down and ears ready for some audio rec tech. This is Anla Cortis and Studio for Wire Plugs. I love that track. That was Leo Abrahams and a really gorgeous piece of treated guitar music called Pendulum from his new album Scene Memory, in which he tells us he was influenced by the composer Morton Feldman. And before that you heard Anla Cortis and Studio for Wire Plugs, a track he recorded in 1991 but has just put out on an album called Tapeworks. Now those two very different kinds of abstract instrumental music have a common theme, do they not, Mark?
They do indeed, and the theme was the guitar, because Anla Cortis said that one of the most annoying sounds he encountered during his years playing in rock bands was the sound of the jack plug being plugged into the electric guitar and the amp, that horrible sort of, I don't know, buzzing noise. So that piece, Studio for Wire Plugs, which he did in 1991, was entirely composed of the noise of jack plugs going into a guitar.
That was him trying to get us to share his pain, was it?
Yeah, 2.5 minutes of plugging in, and then followed by that guitar track by Leo Abrahams, which he recorded all in real time. The processing was done as he was playing live, and it was a very beautiful album. Right, on to our main feature now. Jem Finer is no stranger to mixing it, and I suppose given his amazing career arc, that's no surprise. He's a founding member of the Pogues, but as a former computer science graduate afterwards, he decided, with his computing skills, to go into creating sound installations. He's been in the news recently for winning the PRS New Music Award. His winning piece is Score for a Hole in the Ground, a self-playing sound sculpture in a wood in Kent. So we decided to go and see it. In fact, the morning I drove into London, he had a feature on the Today programme, no less. But the morning we were due to drive to see it, we got a message from Jem asking Robert and me to meet him at a lighthouse in East London. So that's where our report begins.
Now, we've come today to a really remarkable site. It's an old wharf near the Blackwall Tunnel in East London. It's quiet. We've got the Thames in all its glory around us. It's a beautiful sunny day, and we're standing next to a building marked Lighthouse 1864.
Yes, and this is one of the places that you can find Jem Finer, former member of the Pogues, and now a sound sculptor and designer of all sorts of installations. He recently won the PRS prize, and we're going to go and visit that later on. But this is the first site of his that I'm aware of, and let's go in and see if he's here.
Hello.
Jem, this is Mixing It. We've come to talk to you.
Come in.
So tell us the history of this lighthouse,
This is
Jem.
an amazing building.
It was built for Michael Faraday. This whole site was where, since the early 18th century, light buoys and lighthouses were, well, the fittings for them were made on this site, Trinity House. And Michael Faraday became their scientist in residence. And he started to develop such heavy optics for lighthouses, he had to build this standalone tower.
So what have you done here?
Well, I've been fortunate enough in 2000 to be allowed to set up Long Player, which is a 1,000-year-long piece of music. So this was the initial place to install it, to make a listening post.
Can we hear in the background some notes from Long Player?
Yeah, it's percolating down the stairwell, yeah. The speakers are up in the lantern room, so instead of projecting light, it's now kind of projecting sound.
So we're standing at the bottom of a stairwell. Should we go up the stairs?
Yeah, please.
This really is amazing, isn't it?
Now we're in the glass top of the old lighthouse. Fantastic views of Canary Wharf and the Millennium Dome, if you like that kind of thing. And the Thames, looking like a sea more than a river.
Where are the sounds coming from that we're hearing?
Well, there's 4 speakers built into the wall. It's kind of mock quadraphonic. It's like left and right one side, left and right the other side. And then there's 2 sub-bass units.
To me, this is sort of like it's like a sense-around experience, isn't it? Because you've got this, you're in this amazing location, you've got this extraordinary view, and these very evocative sounds. Did you construct the whole thing as an all-in-one experience?
Well, it wasn't sort of, Long Player wasn't developed specifically for this location. It was more okay. Actually, it's quite funny how it came to be here, because I had to enter into a Faustian pact with the Millennium Dome to get money to, realise it. I was working with an organisation called Archangel, and we tried really hard to get their money but not be in the dome. Michael Morris, one of the directors of Archangel, he had this really good idea. Well, I thought it was a great idea, which was that he said, I know there's a lighthouse opposite the dome, so why don't we propose to the dome people that the listening post's actually in the lighthouse, but they have virtual reality headsets in the dome, so you put them on and you see yourself in the lighthouse listening to the music, looking back at the dome. Well, they hated that idea. But we thought then, well, what the hell, let's see if we can put a listening post in here anyway. And, so Trinity Boy Wharf said yes. And immediately, it's like, geez, this place is actually so perfect. There's something amazing about it. The circular space, for a start. It sort of, everything in Long Player revolves around circles. The music itself is totally circular. It repeats every 1,000 years. It's basically just a very long loop. And just the waveforms themselves, these sinusoidal waveforms, it's like drawing out a circle, and the circles are the bowls. So, and just acoustically as well, it's fantastic.
It's very reverberative, isn't it? I mean, all the surfaces are maximum reverb.
It's so live,
Because, people will probably know you've had a lot of publicity recently for the PRS Award, and we're going to go and look at that sound installation. But did you take any ideas from this to your new piece?
Yeah, they're very related. In fact, a friend of mine the other day, Paul Bennon, joked that Score for a Hole in the Ground's the B-side of Long Player. And in a sense it is. It's because, Long Player is very, it's totally deterministic. So, it's very much a composition. You could notate it, in dots and lines, the whole thing. It would obviously be rather a large volume, but you could. And the other thing is it's quite high maintenance, it's here now, but to keep it actually going, it's going to have to be put in a much more sustainable form than a sort of vaguely flaky old iMac. So I started to think I'd like to make something that, again, was long durational, but totally indeterminate in terms of duration, in terms of score, and something which would just look after itself. It was reliant on nothing except, weather, gravity, no technology.
Well, let's jump in Mark's old jalopy and go and have a look at this new piece.
So, from Trinity Boy Wharf, opposite the Millennium Dome, we've driven out of London, down the motorway. We're in the countryside in Kent, a very beautiful forest. Jem, how did you find this place, or how did this place find you?
Yeah, it's more a case of the place found me. This forest, Kingswood, it's a Forestry Commission forest, but within it operates an arts organisation, Stour Valley Arts. And I was invited here September last year by Sandra Drew, the director, to come and have a look around with a view to maybe using it as a location.
So the prize that you won was the sort of the design, the idea of this piece?
Yeah, it was a proposal. The competition was inviting proposals for new musical compositions.
And what was your idea?
Well, the idea was to find a hole in the ground, to modify the landscape in a way that water would drip into it, and rain, obviously, and to fill it in some way with percussive instruments or objects that would be played by water dripping into it, and then to have this amplified by a horn rising up out of it.
Oh, look, here we are. We're just walking up a hill. Wow. There's a sort of track up through the trees, and in the middle we can just see what looks like an enormous record player horn. Did you have that made?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's beyond my capabilities, I'm afraid. Yeah.
From this distance, it looks like a sort of weird metallic flower sprouting out of the middle of a copse of trees. It's an incredible looking thing.
What point can you hear the sounds of it?
Well, it depends on two things. It depends on the weather. So if there's a breeze and any sort of ambient noise makes it harder to hear it until you're closer. But also it depends on the velocity and size of the drips going in at any time.
And did you design that horn?
I did.
Jem?
Yeah.
Well, you could classify this as a piece of regular sculpture as much as a sound.
Well, yeah, that's part of it. It's always conceived of as being more than just composition. I wanted it to have this very strong visual side to it too.
Right, so now we're right up close. So the sound we're listening to there, what is it?
Well, it's the sound of water dripping from underneath these stones onto various tuned percussive instruments and into water as well. There's about a metre of water in the bottom of the hole.
I should describe what we have here. At the base of the huge, great speaker, or what would you describe that as?
Well, it's a speaker.
A horn.
Yeah.
We have the base of it is surrounded by a circle, probably 3 foot in diameter, of stones with small, they look like ventilator shafts or loudspeakers built into the stones. And that's how we're hearing the sound.
Yeah, basically underneath here, it's a actually 2.4 metre diameter hole, 7 metres deep. And there's a grill underneath here. It's covered with this deep layer of flint. And these openings are just sort of conduits for sound to come directly out. So the sound comes out of the horn. It's piped up out of the horn, and
I just
also
went to
more
listen
directly out of
further
this.
over to the horn, Jem. I couldn't hear it as clearly as I can hear the sounds up close.
No, well, you have to get up on a level with it on the rim of the pond for a start. But also the sound of the wind in the trees will make it actually quite hard to hear it.
That's
when
when
there's no wind at all, you can hear it very clearly.
One thing that strikes me is you're completely reliant on water as the sound source. What happens in dry weather when you don't have any rain?
Well, up here there's a pond that's been dug specially to collect water when there is rain. It's kind of local style of collecting water. It's a dew pond. So in this kind of landscape, chalk and flint landscape where there's no sort of streams, they'll dig a depression and line it with clay. So over time it collects rainwater and dew and so on. So that pond there is sort of dug out specifically to feed the hole when there is no rain. Now if the pond were to dry up as well, the music, the composition would presumably have a pause in it.
Having stood around it for 10 minutes or so, I'm struck by how like bell ringing it sounds.
I wanted sounds that had a kind of sinusoidal nature for a start.
Sorry, can you just explain that word to us?
A sinusoidal nature.
Yes.
You know, bell-like tones, they're a very pure tone, like an organ tone, which if you display it on an oscilloscope, it displays as a sine wave. And the property of sine waves is that if you add different sine waves together, you get more complex sounds emerging from them. It's one of the fundamental principles of long player. You know, so not only is in long player the algorithm rearranging material, but the different combinations of the sounds, you get new sounds emerging which aren't actually there to start with. So I wanted to try and have that emergent sonic property here, and so I was looking for bell-like sounds. Bells were too hard to ring with a drop of water, but I found that stainless steel discs of certain thicknesses and diameters and hardness would actually sound virtually indistinguishable from bells. And they're much more sensitive to a drop of water, so that's basically what the instruments are. And the other thing is that the way drips behave, it's not actually random, it's more like a chaotic system. And so, you know, chaotic system so complex it appears to be random, but actually there's all sorts of patterns in it. And that's what I think tends to happen here, is you get different rhythms of drips setting up in different places for a while. And so they play repeating patterns, and those repeating patterns move in and out of phase with each other, which is exactly the principle of bell ringing.
Yes, that's what that is, isn't it?
So it is. Yeah, it's not just the sonic aspect, but it's also the organisational aspect.
Oh look, it's a herd of deer.
Roe deer. That's a shame we can't lure the deer over here. The deer makes a few hoofs running across. This will be fantastic.
They go to the pond to water.
Well, many thanks to Jem Finer for a magnificent day out in the country. That was some of his score for A Hole in the Ground. And while we were actually examining this hole, a number of visitors stopped by. One was a tree ranger The other was a herd of deer, which we mentioned in the package. And just as we were leaving, who should fetch up but Vic Reeves and his wife and small baby.
Yes.
So it was a surprisingly busy scene there in the middle of Kingswood, but it's a lovely spot, and if it's definitely worth a trip. It's a destination visit, that I think.
Worth a day out, and we'll put details of where it is on our playlist. And after we'd met up with Jem Finer, he sent us a CD of remixes of his long player project, and this is the Scanner long player remix.
That was a remix of Jem Finer's Long Player by Scanner, and rather like the score for A Hole in the Ground, it's well worth, if you can be bothered to find your way to this rather obscure little wharf in East London, it's well worth going and checking out Jem Finer's Long Player project in that little lighthouse looking over the Thames. It's a beautiful spot. And
in fact, I took some pictures of our day out, which may be on our website.
Oh, yeah.
And because the view from the lighthouse looks right across to the Dome and across to
digital
Canary
wizard.
Wharf.
Yeah, it's a lovely thing.
And of course, there is an American diner in the little wharf, which is well worth a visit. Right, improvising throws together some unusual instrument combinations, and here's a particularly good one. Canadian Paul Plymley plays sparkling jazzy blues piano. He's joined here by the Chinese zheng player Mei Han. The zheng is a 25-string zither. It's a traditional Chinese instrument, and it's tuned to the pentatonic scale. And the results are surprisingly fiery and concise, and in Mei Han's expert hands, the zheng sometimes sounds like a bluesy guitar. From their album of improvisations, this is Emptied Diligence. I really like it when they get stuck in and attack their instruments. That's Mei Han playing the Chinese zheng and Paul Plymley on piano. That track was Empty Diligence from the album Ume Improvisations for Zheng and Piano, and it's on the Czar Discs label.
Now, Pere Ubu have just released their first studio album in 4 years and called it, controversially, Why I Hate Women. Needless to say, this title is ironic or something, and apparently relates to a novel that Jim Thompson never wrote. It doesn't tell you anything, frankly, about the music on the album, which has all the spectral intensity and vocal hysteria we've come to expect from Pere Ubu these past 30 years. David Thomas is still very much in charge. His guitar partner from Two Pale Boys, Keith Molyneux, offers fractured support, and there's plenty of deliberate electronic absurdity from the synth player Robert Wheeler. This track is a studio improvisation, apparently. It's called Blue Velvet.
In my head is a white room where all the good things go. A man with a bag walks into leaves it on the floor and goes. Goodbye. Broken keys and an empty room. I've got a job for life. I got a job. There's a shadow hanging over me. It's dark and gray and blocks the sun. And I think it's you. The sun does not warm me. The clean rain does not fall. In my head is a white room drops it on the floor.
In it goes. Ubu in a track called Blue Velvet from the album Why I Hate Women, which is out now on the Glitter House label.
Didn't sound particularly improvised, sounded like a sort of well worked out song.
It is, the whole album actually is fairly well considered as far as that goes, but there were 3 tracks which were listed as being born out of improvisations, but they play with tremendous cohesion as a group, this lot, considering that David Thomas is the only remaining link with the original band.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, why does this go out under Per Ubu? Why not David Thomas?
I think it's because he's playing with more musicians, and certainly that the character who plays the synthesizers, Robert Wheeler, who's I think he's based in Ohio, he certainly brings something to it which David Thomas doesn't normally have at his disposal when he just performs with his trio.
Right, on to the next thing. The main man behind the Life Force Trio is the LA-based producer Carlos Nino. He's enlisted the help of a second member, the multi-instrumentalist and songwriter Dexter Story. And when asked who the third member is, Nino likes to reply, "The third member is floating." So the music is spacey and takes much of its inspiration from out-there jazzers like Sun Ra and the Coltrane's. Mixed with Nino's soul-y production, which is all done in his Echo Park living room, it sounds like this. Here are 2 tracks joined together, Carousel and first Space Flowers.
close to me, right in my chair. I want you now, I want to hold your body close. Come here right now.
The Life Force Trio, the brainchild of the American producer Carlos Nino. And we didn't put those two tracks together. They like that on the album. Space Flowers, and you just heard Carousel. The album's called Living Room, I suppose because it was recorded in his living room. And it's on the Plug Research label. And if you'd like details of that and all the music you've heard in tonight's show, as well as details of Jem Finer's sound installations, you'll find it all on our playlist, which you can get by emailing us, mixing.it@bbc.co.uk, or by looking on CFAX, page 652, or you can write to us for the playlist, Mixing It, BBC Broadcasting House, London W1A1AA. And last but not least, there is the website. The playlist will be up there. The address is bbc.co.uk/Radio3. Don't forget the new music message board where you can add your comments. And don't forget the Listen Again section, where this Mixing It will be up for the next week for your listening pleasure.
You could listen to it all week if you wanted. What on earth would that be like? What would that do to your mental health? Now, we leave you with a song by one of the great discoveries of 2006. For me, Jonas Policewoman. This is one of 2 previously unreleased tracks that accompany her new single, Christabel. And it rocks, more or less, around a set of highly improbable chords and an even stranger lyrical proposition. It's called Happiness is a Violator. We're back next week with an all-CD edition. Until then, good night.
Good night.
What if you just told me the lie that you told the millions tonight? Well, could you look into my dying eyes and repeat those words to me? I have no choice. I have no choice. I have no choice. I have no choice. Because the shaking inch by idiot, you're plain to see. Well, can you hear this? Your happiness is a violator. If you could hear this, you'd leave the ride, you'd leave the wine, you'd leave the house. You have no choice. You have no choice. You have no choice. You have no choice. Your cuts are shaking, inch by idiot. Your cuts are shaking, inch by idiot. Your cuts are shaking, inch by idiot. You're plain to see.
Mixing It was presented by Robert Sandel and Mark Russell, and the producer was James Parkin.